Hello everybody, welcome to this session where I'm going to be talking about these 5 steps for working with emotions. So, let's just get me back. So, Dr. John Sarno believed that symptoms and pain were the result of a condition called TMS, or tension myositis syndrome, and not due to a structural abnormality. So he believed that the cause of these symptoms and pain was repressed emotions. His approach has helped many people make progress and recover from the conditions that they've had. But how do we work with emotions? So in this session we'll explore this topic, and I'll share a 5-step process developed by Marc Brackett from Yale University. So do say hi if you can hear me live, or just put a hashtag replay if you're watching the replay. So there are many approaches for working with emotions. Why should we pay attention to our emotions? Someone shared the pressure cooker analogy with me recently, and I found it very helpful. Imagine you've got a pressure cooker, and every time you repress your emotions, it's like you're putting them in this pressure cooker. And that causes nervous system dysregulation. So imagine we continue to repress our emotions, we keep adding them to our pressure cooker. So this is going to result in more nervous system dysregulation, and ultimately we know that nervous system dysregulation can result in ill health. And consider the lid of that pressure cooker. In fact, I've got a little slide of a picture of a pressure cooker. The lid of the pressure cooker is anxiety. So anxiety is a symptom of your vessel, your nervous system, being too full up of emotion. All right. Just going back to the previous slide, I have talked about Dr. John Sarno's 12 daily reminders in another video. I talk about the applications and limitations of his approach for people with mecfs. So do check out that video. So consider that if you've got this pressure cooker situation going on, just trying to take the lid off a pressure cooker when it's under pressure is not a good idea. Anyone know why it's not a good idea? Just pop your answer in the chat. I had this experience a while back. I made some hummus using a recipe from a chef called Ottolenghi, and he suggested putting bicarbonate of soda in the mixture, and I used a NutriBullet to do it, which is you screw the lid on, you blitz the thing. What I didn't realise is the addition of the bicarbonate of soda put the container under pressure. It was very hard to get the lid off, but when I did get the lid off, it exploded everywhere, including all over the kitchen and all over me. Okay, pressure cooker's the same. If you try and take the lid off whilst it's under pressure, it will explode. The food will go everywhere. Okay, that's why you have to reduce the pressure gradually, and that's quite a useful analogy to how we might approach working with emotions. Gently, gradually, rather than trying to take the lid off and delve deeply. Okay, that can be too much for some people's nervous system. Okay, so if we consider emotions, our emotional state determines where we will direct our attention, what we remember and what we learn. Our decisions are influenced by our emotional state. So consider that according to research, negative emotional states is linked to unhealthy behaviours, poor diet, smoking, excessive drinking, physical inactivity, social isolation, which in turn are linked to poor health. Now, obviously, if you've got health conditions which mean you are restricted in how much you can exercise, for example, interact with others, then that, is something that at the moment is as a result of the condition rather than necessarily those emotional states. However, just consider the impact that that's having. If we are in a negative emotional state, we're more likely to go off track. Lynn says, sorry I'm late. No problem, Lynn. Nice to have you join us. Do feel free to say hello. I can see a few people have joined, so feel free to say hello. Let me know where you are. Research also shows that a 30-minute argument slows down the body's healing for a day, and that doubles if we argue regularly. Impatience, irritability, grouchiness may damage health, according to research. So third thing, emotions cause different physiological reactions to our bodies, affecting our physical and mental well-being. And it can affect our effectiveness, our ability to achieve big goals and thrive. So Marc Brackett in his book suggests that we use emotions as tools, okay? And I will be talking about that in a bit more depth in another webinar I'm going to be doing in a couple of weeks. I'll tell you more about that at the end. And at the end we'll do a short visualization around acceptance of emotions. So research also shows that early life exposure to early exposure to mild everyday stress enhances our ability to regulate emotions and build resilience, whereas early exposure to extreme or prolonged stress result in overactivity in the HPA axis and reduce ability to regulate emotions, and this results in less resilience. According to research, people who scored low with positive emotions are 3 times more likely to get sick after exposure to a virus than those who scored higher. When the latter group did get sick, the symptoms were less severe. So why do we suppress emotions? What are your thoughts about that? Feel free to let me know in the chat. So Alan says hello from Glastonbury, Somerset. Hi Alan, nice to have you with us. Hoping to be in Glastonbury next year for the festival. So what are your thoughts on that? What are the reasons that you think that you suppress emotions? Okay, I will share a few thoughts on that. One is that we can develop the belief that it's not okay to have certain emotions. Okay, it's okay to feel happy, to feel joyful, but it's not okay to feel angry or to feel rage. So Katina Ann says, a study is interesting, just joined. We suppress emotions because we feel it's safer sometimes. Yeah, so that is one reason. Yeah, the ACE studies, adverse childhood experiences studies, illustrate that those difficult early experiences, and a lot of them, can have a massive impact on our health and our development. Okay, so Donna says hi from Australia. So we've got a international audience. Glastonbury, I know someone on the call is from Isle of Wight, I believe, and we've got Donna in Australia. So that's one reason, okay? Some people fear the intensity of their emotions, fear that actually if they allow themselves to get angry or rage, then they'll lose control. They fear that the emotion will cause conflict or rejection. Okay, which of those do you resonate with? And do you have any other thoughts about why we suppress, repress, judge, reject emotions? Let me know. Okay, so sorry, I've lost my place. Let me just find my place again. All right, yeah. So how do we work with emotions? Well, in Marc Brackett's book called Permission to Feel, he talks about 5 essential skills of emotional intelligence. So Katina Ann says fear of not being believed as a child. And Lynn says all 3. Anna says hi from Germany. Hello, Anna. Nice to have you with us. And thanks for your nice comments on YouTube recently. So the first essential skill, according to Marc Brackett, is that we need to be able to recognize emotions. Okay, so he explains that it's important to be able to identify and recognize different emotions, both in oneself and in others. Okay, so we need to develop the ability in ourselves to tune in to what's going on emotionally. What are your thoughts about how good you are at tuning in to your emotions? Let's say, for example, you have an interaction with someone and you notice you feel a little bit uncomfortable. I posted something on another platform recently where I said that our nervous system knows when we don't feel safe, even when we don't consciously register the reasons for that, or even that fact that we're feeling unsafe. But our nervous system is like the early warning system. How good do you think you are at being able to tune in? Oh, actually, I'm feeling some discomfort here. One of the things that I've learned that's very powerful is to actually process on our feet. I've talked about this before, that in the past someone might say something that I felt uncomfortable about, and I would suppress or I would repress my emotions. So the difference between suppression and repression is unconscious pressing down of our emotions, whereas suppression is the conscious decision not to act on our emotions. But I was so good at repressing my emotions, it was unconscious, that my body just locked up in tension. And what I learned is that I had to practice thinking on my feet. And what I would do is I'd say, actually, when you say that to a person, I notice that I'm feeling uncomfortable. Why do I feel uncomfortable? And that gave me a little bit of space to start tuning in, and then I'd be able to start making sense in the moment of what was going on. And that will bring us on to the next point, okay, which is that we need to learn how to understand our emotions. Okay, it involves grasping the nuances, the subtleties, and the reasons behind specific emotional responses. So in that situation I've just described, I'd start recognizing I was feeling uncomfortable because the way the person was communicating didn't feel respectful to me. And one of my values is that I like respect, and I'm sure that's a value that you have as well. Okay, so as I say, just by thinking on my feet, I learned to be able to process what's going on more quickly, rather than just repressing the emotion, which then affected my energy. Because my body would tighten up, my muscles would literally tighten up in my neck and back, and it would impact my energy, particularly when I had mecfs. Okay, so Marc Brackett emphasizes the importance of understanding the root causes of emotions to facilitate effective communication and problem solving. So, for example, I was working with a client recently, and what they recognized is that when they were getting upset because of what someone was saying about them or thinking about them, they recognized that this was a learned pattern. They learned at a young age to worry about what other people thought. And I could really relate to what this person was saying, because I used to worry a lot about what people thought. And if someone trolled me on Twitter or was made some comment that was a bit aggressive, I would take it personally. Whereas now I kind of feel that, you know, it's up to people whether they choose to behave in a reasonable adult manner or whether they want to interact in a way that's aggressive, combative, disrespectful. If it is the latter, there's a good chance I might just block them. Okay. And recently some people have made some comments, and you know, they're valid comments from their perspective, that they felt I was making statements about mecfs being all in the mind. I wasn't. What I was saying is that the mind can influence the body, and therefore if we have a health condition, it's important to recognize that if stress is an issue, then that's something we need to address. And so I got into conversation with a couple of people, and one person actually did say, actually, I get what you're saying. So it felt like quite a fruitful conversation. So let's just look at the comments. Alan says self-reflection is a great skill. Absolutely. And I'd be interested to know, Alan, how you developed that skill. Lynn says people trigger me and I feel scared and frightened, and I don't know what people want from you, I think, or the games they play. Okay, so just recognize in what you said, Lynn, I might put it differently. When you say people trigger me, all right, then the implication of that is they are at fault. And I'm not saying you're at fault. What I suggest you consider is that people do their behaviors, all right? And how we respond says something about us. Now, that doesn't mean we're bad or wrong. It just means that we have certain buttons that if people behave in certain ways, say certain things, it can trigger our buttons. So why that's useful is it shifts us from feeling that we're victim, and sometimes, of course, people have been victim, but we are now taking charge. You're saying, okay, when people do certain behaviors, I get triggered. Okay, so they're not bad or to blame or at fault. They're just doing their behaviors. Their behaviors might be dysfunctional. However, I'm taking responsibility for the fact that something is happening in me when they behave in certain ways. Hope that makes sense. I've shared quite a lot there. Katina Ann says, very much in tune with my emotions. I oil my feathers. That's an interesting expression, Katina. I don't think I've heard that expression before. I think I know what you mean, but feel free to elaborate. So Alan says, worked as a mental health nurse. Fantastic, amazing. You know, it's amazing work. I used to work in mental health as well. So massive respect for that work. Situations trigger me. And Catherine, also from Germany. Okay. Well, I would say we need to avoid blame. Okay, Lynn says blaming people instead of situation. If we're blaming other people, we're giving away our power. Okay, so sometimes people do behave badly, but if I can either get triggered by that, or I can recognize they're behaving badly, notice that it's something that says something about them, but I don't have to respond in that old way that I used to. Okay, so Katina says, water off a duck's back. Don't allow other people's... Okay, Lynn says, no, I meant not blaming people. Yeah, perfect. Thanks for explaining. I love that expression. I oil my feathers. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, so let's keep going. So next one, so understanding emotions is important. Next thing, we need to label emotions. Okay. The ability to accurately label emotions is crucial for effective communication, according to Marc Brackett. So finding the right words for our feelings enhances our capacity to express ourselves and enables others to understand our emotional state. Obviously, that is reliant on the fact that they are interested in understanding our emotional state. Oops, let me just, what have I done there? Okay. So this is something I will talk more about in another video, because I think it's a very interesting topic, labeling emotions, building our emotional vocabulary. What's really interesting is when I work with people, often they have got some of the language for the negative emotional states that they're experiencing, but they're not so good at identifying the positive states. For example, people will say, when I ask them, what is a positive change you've noticed? And they might say something like, I noticed that I wasn't feeling anxious. And so I say to them, well, what were you feeling? And some people have to really think about that. Oh, what was I feeling? And then they realise actually I was feeling calm, and it's so unfamiliar to them to feel calm that they have to kind of do an internal search to find the word, okay? So, but what's also interesting is that some people find it really difficult to label their emotions because they are so good at repressing their emotions, they feel a lot of numbness. Okay, so it can take practice. I'm doing a course at the moment which is all about working with emotions, and you know, someone was sharing that it can take a while for people, if they are used to if they are used to numbing their emotions, to tune in to emotions. It takes practice, okay? And one of the things we can do is, if we're not sure what we're feeling, is to guess what would it be reasonable for someone to feel in that situation, okay? And that can help us build our vocabulary and create neurology in our brain, wiring in the brain, so that we can actually connect what's going on in our body to an emotion, to a label, okay? So Katina says, water off a duck's back, no longer rise to other people's confrontation. Yeah, so that's something I'm really working on, that I've learned a lot about, how to, you know, not be triggered by other people. So that's my aspiration for everyone, that we can learn to be triggered less by others' behavior, okay? So the next step is expressing emotion. And authentic expression of emotion is a means of promoting mental well-being. So what's your experience of that? What's your experience of expressing an emotion? Something happened, you felt uncomfortable, you expressed your emotion in a way that was clear and clean. You know, maybe I need to make the distinction between projection. You know, if, let's say, an example I often use is, let's say I've asked my friends to bring my book back that I loaned to him, and he arrives and he's forgotten to bring the book. If I was projecting my emotion, I might say, you're an idiot, you know, I can't rely on you. So I'm feeling annoyed, but I'm not owning that I'm feeling annoyed. I'm throwing my emotion at him. That's more likely to result in hurt or conflict. Whereas if I say, I'm feeling annoyed that you didn't bring my book back, then it depends on how my friend is used to responding to communication. But he might say, okay, I understand you're feeling annoyed. I'm really sorry. You know, I had this domestic crisis. My washing machine was leaking, and so I was a bit late, so I rushed out of the house, completely forgot. And then I might say, oh, okay. Or, you know, for example, if I say, rather than I feel annoyed, I'm irritated, I'm disappointed, then he might explain again, and you know, that helps me feel more peace and calm about the situation. All right, so when I learned assertive communication, it was a complete game changer. I've got a book on my shelf, let me just grab it. It's called Non-Violent Communication. Not a great title, but it's a brilliant book. It's the first book I ever read. I got to the end of it and I just started reading it again. Okay, it's a very powerful book. So if you want to learn about assertive communication, I really recommend this book. I do teach people assertive communication when they do my Building Resilience course, but that's a really great resource if you want to just read a book. And there's some really powerful stories in there, including a story of a woman who was working at a night shelter, and a chap came in saying, I need a bed for the night. And she said, I'm sorry, we haven't got any beds. And he was very angry, maybe was a little bit drunk or whatever. He grabbed a knife from his pocket and he pushed her to the floor, held the knife to her throat, and she used the tools that she'd learned in that book. She said, I'm feeling scared and I'm also feeling concerned for you, and I really want to help you. Would you be willing for us to sit down and have a chat so we can sort you out a bed for the night? And he put the knife down and lifted her up, and they sat down and had a conversation, and she helped him find a place. All right. Perhaps that book may have saved her life. Certainly it helped her deal with that challenging situation in a resourceful way. So Marc Brackett, in his book, he talks about healthy ways of articulating feelings and finding the balance between being open, sharing what we're feeling, and considering others. So how we communicate is very important and can make the difference between resolving conflict or escalating conflict. Okay, and certainly that's something you learn from that book. Okay, so, and the fifth step is regulating emotions. So in his book, Marc Brackett explores strategies for regulating emotions. He says that emotional intelligence is not about suppressing or oppressing emotions, but rather managing our emotions constructively. And I have made videos where I talk about nervous system regulation of emotions. So check out my YouTube channel. One of the techniques he talks about is called cognitive restructuring. I call it reframing, finding ways of looking at situations in more useful ways. If you'd like access to a reframing worksheet, then currently I'm doing this Your Best December coaching. Today was the first week and we met a couple of times, and we'll be doing the same again. I've recorded the videos. If you'd like to join the Your Best December coaching, you get a number of resources, free resources, including the reframing worksheet. So if you'd like to know more about that, comment best below and I'll send you a link where you can find out more and decide whether it's for you. So you may have noticed that the acronym of those 5 steps is the word ruler. Okay, so I am going to be doing a presentation in a couple of weeks with Dr Ellie Stein. Some of you may know her. She had ME CFS herself and has made massive progress and is able to live a much more fulfilled life. And on the 14th of December, that's at 6 p.m. GMT, so 7 p.m. European time. If you want to know more about that, then comment ally, the word ally, ALLY, below. I will pop the link below this video if you are watching on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, just comment and I will PM you the link if you'd like to join that. If you register for it, you'll be able to watch the replay even if you can't make that time. So if you've got any questions about what I've shared, pop them in the chat. Let's have a look. Any more comments? So Lynn says, I'm better with my children than with others. Well, that's great. So Geeta says, best. Okay, I will share the link. And Lynn says, ally. All right, so I will share those links with you. If you've got any questions, say comment in the chat. Maybe we'll finish with a very brief guided relaxation around working with emotions. So I'll just give you a moment to ask any questions if you've got any. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so I invite you just to close your eyes. Obviously only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. Lynn says thanks, enjoy your evening. Thank you, Lynn, I will, and you too, and same to everyone watching. So I invite you to close your eyes, make yourself comfortable. Obviously only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. I invite you just to take a breath in through your nose if that's comfortable, breathing into your belly, breathing out of your nose. As you breathe out, just allow your out breath to be a little bit longer than your in breath. When you do that, it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, otherwise known as the healing state. So as you breathe in and out, just allowing your mind, your body, your physiology to slow down, to soften and relax. And I invite you to consider the following ideas. Your nervous system knows when you don't feel safe. You can learn to tune in to your nervous system. You can learn to embrace the idea that your authentic emotions, as opposed to your thought-based emotions or feelings, are a good guide. Our authentic emotions are a signal that something isn't quite right and action is needed. I invite you to consider that you can embrace the idea that it's okay to have emotions. It's okay to be emotional. You can embrace the notion that it's okay to connect to your emotions. It's okay to process your emotions. And it's okay to express your emotions in appropriate ways. It's also okay if we make mistakes, if we are sometimes reactive. We can be compassionate to ourselves in those situations. Learn from the experience. Maybe to mentally rehearse how we would love to respond in that kind of situation, were it to arise again. I get clients to do that every day for 30 days if they want to embed a new way of behaving in a situation where they noticed they were reactive. So I invite you just to learn whatever you need to learn from today's session, so you can use it to to move forward, making changes that you choose to make. You can either just carry on with your eyes closed for a little while. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. Bring yourself back. Give yourself a pat on the back for being open and willing to learn and engage. Thanks everybody for your engagement. Makes it much more interesting to me. Nice to see some familiar names and also to meet a few people who I haven't interacted with before. Alan says thanks so much, so informative. You are welcome, Alan. So thanks everybody. As I say, I will make more videos exploring some of these topics in more detail because I think it's a very interesting and important topic. If you do like this video, if you haven't left a comment or a like, do so. Do share it with others if you found it helpful. If you're watching on YouTube, do like and subscribe. Hit the notifications button to be notified of more content. If you're watching on Facebook, then click the follow button or like button, whatever it is. So keep going. Wishing you great health. Thanks everybody. Bye for now.